In Hollywood, not all that glitters is golden. Some legends cast long, cold shadows. Behind every legendary smile lies a story no one dares to tell. When admiration meets unease, and legacy overshadows truth, even the most beloved stars can leave behind trails of silence, tension, and emotional scars. Can someone be both iconic and quietly feared? Can the warmth of public praise drown out the chill felt by those who worked closely behind the scenes? These are the questions that linger in the margins of stardom. Unspoken, inconvenient, but deeply real. James Garner, known to generations of film and television fans as the calm, grounded presence in a world of egos and excess, never chased headlines or controversy. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, and he certainly wasn't the type to stir the pot. In an industry fueled by drama, Garner stood apart as a man who brought humility, kindness, and quiet leadership to every set he walked onto. Lighting crews, makeup artists, extras, co-stars, he treated them all with decency, creating work environments defined by collaboration and mutual respect. That's why, when someone like him raised even the slightest concern about a fellow actor, the industry should have listened. But when his subtle warnings came, they weren't met with outrage or reaction, they were met with silence. Because the person he was talking about was Lauren Beal. Lauren Beal was the definition of screen royalty. From her unforgettable debut opposite Humphrey Bogart in the 1940s, she commanded Hollywood's attention. Her smoky voice, piercing eyes, and razor-sharp wit became synonymous with power and elegance. She wasn't just a star. She was a statement. She rewrote the rules for women in film, rejecting the fragile ornamental roles so many actresses were forced into and instead demanding characters with bite, presence, and complexity. The world saw her as fiercely independent, unapologetically intelligent, and refreshingly honest. She stood tall in an industry that often belittled women who refused to smile and stay quiet. But behind the powerful performances and glowing headlines, a very different story was taking shape. Those who worked with her, especially on long or emotionally intense projects, began whispering a different narrative. Not one of scandal or drama, but of an energy that changed the air in a room. Cold, controlling, condescending. That's how many described her once the cameras stopped rolling. She didn't scream. She didn't throw tantrums. But her presence carried weight. An invisible heaviness that left others cautious and sometimes even resentful. These weren't just rumors passed along in tabloids. They were quiet confessions made by professionals who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking out against a legend. In 1981, those two very different forces, Garner's quiet grace and Beal's commanding chill, collided on the set of The Fan, a psychological thriller that should have been just another page in their distinguished careers. Garner played Beal's ex-husband, while she starred as a Broadway diva being stalked by an obsessed admirer. On the surface, it was a straightforward production. But behind the scenes, the tension simmered in subtle ways that never made headlines. This wasn't a dramatic clash of egos. There were no screaming matches or storming off set. Instead, there was something more insidious. A constant unspoken friction that made every day feel heavier than it should have. Garner had been on countless sets in his long career, but this one felt different. It lacked the warmth, the camaraderie, the feeling of shared purpose. Beal's need for control seeped into every corner of the production. She wasn't just concerned with her lines, she questioned directorial choices, rewrote dialogue without discussion, and made it clear that she expected to be the dominant voice in the room. It was her way or no way. Garner, ever the professional, didn't push back. He wasn't interested in power struggles. But that didn't mean he wasn't affected. His usual light-hearted ease was replaced with careful silence. His smiles didn't last as long. And though he rarely spoke about the experience publicly, when he finally did, it wasn't to attack, it was to tell the truth. Years later, in his memoir The Garner Files, he reflected on that time with quiet restraint. He called Beal difficult, described her as guarded, sharp, and condescending. He spoke of feeling like he was walking on eggshells, never quite sure what might set her off. Not into a rage, but into a cold, dismissive silence that chilled everyone around her. Garner didn't exaggerate or embellish. That wasn't his style. He simply painted the picture as he experienced it. Honestly, calmly, and without bitterness. But even then, many dismissed his account. Because Beal wasn't just an actress. She was an institution. And in Hollywood, institutions are rarely questioned, even when they cast long shadows. Over time, however, Garner's experience began to echo in other places. Directors, co-stars, stage managers, even costume designers, they began to share similar stories, usually off the record, almost always anonymously. They talked about productions where the creative spirit died quietly, suffocated by Beal's exacting standards and refusal to collaborate. They described how her mere presence altered the tone of a rehearsal room, how her insistence on control left others feeling like passengers in their own work. Some actors even left productions entirely, unable to endure the emotional toll. It wasn't personal, they said. It was environmental. It was the air she brought with her. Thin, cold, and tightly regulated. And still, in public, Beal remained beloved. Interviews showcased her intelligence, her cutting humor, her refusal to play nice for the sake of pleasing others. She gave voice to struggles that many women faced in Hollywood. Ageism, sexism, the pressure to conform, and she did so without flinching. But that same voice could also dismiss, diminish, and disregard others. In more recent conversations, she began speaking more harshly of younger actors, criticizing modern Hollywood as if it had lost all value since her time. What once sounded like bold honesty began to feel more like bitterness. And gradually, even her most loyal admirers started to see the cracks in the polished image. The truth is, Beal was never a villain. She was a towering talent, a trailblazer, a woman who reshaped Hollywood's expectations. But she was also, by many accounts, someone who demanded complete control. And in doing so, left a trail of strained relationships and emotional exhaustion behind her. Garner never tried to paint her as anything other than what she was. He didn't launch attacks. He didn't seek revenge. He just told the truth, as softly and respectfully as he could. Because to him, it wasn't about gossip. It was about understanding the impact of a person's presence, and the cost that comes when control becomes more important than connection. In Hollywood, stories like these rarely make headlines. They're too complex, too uncomfortable. We love our stars simple. Flawless heroes or scandalous villains. But most real people live in the space between. Beal was neither perfect nor cruel. She was a product of her time, her power, and perhaps her own internal battles. And Garner, in his quiet reflection, helped reveal that truth without tearing her down. He reminded us that legacy isn't just about the roles you play or the lines you deliver. It's about how you treat the people who stand beside you in the shadows of the spotlight. As the years passed and Garner's voice grew quieter, his words lingered. They became part of a larger conversation about Hollywood's hidden dynamics. How charm and status can shield behavior, and how the emotional costs of collaboration are too often ignored. His story, and the stories of those who quietly agreed with him, invite us to look deeper at the legends we adore. Not to diminish them, but to understand them fully. Because only by acknowledging complexity can we truly appreciate the depth of the industry and the people who shape it. So next time a respected voice speaks softly about discomfort or tension, listen. Not every truth needs to be shouted to matter. Some truths are whispered, and it's those we often overlook that carry the greatest weight. James Garner didn't want to take Lauren Beal down. He simply wanted to be heard, and for the industry he loved to be a little more honest about its heroes. If you found this story as compelling as we did, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's always more to uncover beneath the surface, and we're here to bring you those stories that truly matter. Thanks for watching.